Hello, everyone. In prior recordings, I know I've talked about Ubuntu, but I can't remember if I've discussed uh, ways to handle files and things like that. Even if I did cover that, it's probably best for me just to do another recording, as things have certainly changed over the years. Technology changes every year. By the time I push out one recording, it's probably going to be obsolete by the end of this year. So let's just get right into that. We'll start with the PC side. PCs have more options in terms of dealing with files in comparison to consoles, is my understanding. So with PCs, you have the option of using a home server, a thumbstick, or an external hard drive. I personally recommend that if you can build a computer, that you build a home server. It's not a phrase you're going to hear very often, as it does involve more of a setup than normal. But what it is a place to store your files. It's there for storage more than it is administration. You see, in a setup like mine, I have my gaming computer, which is connected to the home server via the local network. What I will do is I will send files from this computer to the other computer for storage. In the case of these recordings, I can send those files over to the other computer, so that when I go to hit the upload button, I'm instead doing it through that computer rather than this one. That's just an example of setup, but let's talk about some of the main reasons why you would do that. The first two are going to be the primary reasons, and the third is only going to depend on you. But your first primary reason for doing a home server with a gaming computer is to keep things clean. With how big files are getting on games, you want to ensure that on your gaming computer you have one drive, and one drive only if you can help it. That drive should be devoted to those game files. Anything like Word documents or things like that should be on the home server in that scenario. So it does help it being clean in that sense. Another way it helps in being clean, and the second major reason, is because as you browse the internet, you're going to be collecting cookies and other crap that will eventually have to be purged from the computer. While there is programs to do that, it's just 10 times easier to have a computer devoted to browsing the internet and things like that. If you're doing a gaming computer, you're going to have Windows. In the home server case, you can use Ubuntu. Ubuntu is going to be far more secure than Windows, so you don't really have to worry about much with that particular setup. Now, the third and final reason is depend on you for the reason of travel. If you're a person that travels a lot for work or business, then that's when this third reason will kick in. The home server has the ability to be connected to, as far as I know, anywhere in the world. In that scenario, it makes it so you don't have to remember to bring an external hard drive or thumbstick. Now, those can get lost, or you can forget them. A lot of people take flights out as early as 6 in the morning. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to remember that crap at 5 or 4 in the morning. Depends on how long it takes me to get ready and things, but I can tell you I'm not going to remember that very well. Sure, you can pack the night before, but things can happen and you can forget. There's tons of scenarios in which you will forget a thumb drive or external hard drive. The home server makes it less stressful in terms of that, no matter how many times you'll forget something, you'll have access to it. In the times that I've traveled and used my home server, I haven't had an issue with it. So that's why I said what I said earlier, because I will admit that I haven't had to test it to the level of a global thing, I guess you can say. Because there's some people that will travel all over the world and many different countries in a single year as part of their job. I'm not one of those people. I've only had to travel for the reasons of either to help family or be there for a funeral. They're my only reasons for traveling these days. Even then, there's times that I can't do it. Medically, I'm just not capable of traveling like I used to. I can't even travel locally as much as I used to because my medical issues have gotten so bad that I have to really be careful of what I'm doing. So that's why I'm saying that. But regardless, you can do it and it will work. It's just a matter of setting it all up. So those are your 3 reasons for a home server. I highly recommend that people do that. You can do it either with older parts, because Ubuntu is not really that picky in terms of hardware, other than maybe a dual-core CPU, but video card doesn't matter, the rest doesn't really matter. So in that scenario, if you're doing it with older hardware, you're going to be doing it with it at minimum a dual-core, maybe integrated graphics, depending on how good the integrated graphics are. If not, then you're going to have to use a dedicated video card, and of course you'll want to use an NAS hard drive if you can help it. If you don't have access to NAS hard drive, then a normal hard drive is perfectly fine. The reason you want an NAS hard drive in a home server scenario is not because of it being a true server, but because NAS hard drives, statistically, will last longer than your traditional hard drives that you'll see in gaming computers or similar applications. So, yeah, there's that. But if you're building a home server, brand new parts and all that, it's going to be a lot different than your older parts. It's going to be built with a Ryzen APU like the one I have on my screen. This is certainly an option. Another option is this one over here, assuming that you can even find it. I have a very hard time finding Athlons on store shelves. I guess you could try also looking for the A series as well. That might have a better chance of being found. It all depends on what you're trying to do. If you're sticking strictly to file storage, you don't need a big APU. But if you are doing something other than file storage, such as some administration tasks, then you're going to want a larger APU, such as this one right here. But other than that, this should work perfectly fine. You'll also want an NAS hard drive, as I was mentioning earlier. And depending on how many files you put through this home server, I would say maybe consider getting a very small solid-state drive. You see, NAS hard drives run at 5400 RPM, so they're going to be slower than the traditional 7200 RPM of the normal hard drives that you'll find in desktops or gaming computers. For that reason, it helps to have a buffer, essentially is what it is, which can be as small as 128 gigabytes. You really don't need that big of a solid-state drive. It's simply there to move a file very quickly, right? So what you would do in that scenario is you would send the file to the solid-state drive, and then eventually you'll get to the point of moving it from the solid-state drive to the NAS hard drive, because it can take that a lot faster, right? So the scenario where I can see something set up more involved than normal, like something like that, is maybe if the home server is trying to store files for, say, a streamer house, right? If you have, let's just say, 6 streamers in one house, right? Well, they're going to be moving a bunch of files either at the same time or on and off over the day. That's where a solid-state drive would come in handy. It will be able to receive and move those files a lot quicker than the NAS drive would. The NAS drive in that particular setup would be used for the operating system and anything that's considered super important. The solid-state drive would just merely be there, as I said, as a buffer. So there you have it. That's the breakdown of all that. Let's go ahead and get into consoles real quickly. So unfortunately, consoles, from what I understand, don't have as much of a luxury in terms of options. From what I understand, the hard drive has to be certified or pre-built or formatted specifically for that console, which is really unfortunate because game files have gotten really large over the years, and I think that even a console would benefit from a solid-state drive. The Crucial MX500 series, as far as I know, is the most highly reviewed budget SSD. You can find a 500 gigabyte for $65 to $70, maybe, depending on how things are going with the market. On sale, it'll probably be lower than that. If it's a 1 terabyte model, it's going to be between $90 and $110. 90 would be the for sale price, 110 would be the normal price for that, which really isn't that bad, all things considered. But like I've said, I think that solid-state drives are important, so I hope that consoles get to the point of giving you options like that. Yeah, so we'll see where things go, but I hope that home servers become an option for consoles as well. Seeing as my console discussion wasn't as big as I was hoping, we'll go ahead and delve into one last discussion. A lot of people have either some sort of fear or are resistant to the idea of building their own computer. I think that home servers are going to be the way to break that. You see, home servers aren't nearly that expensive, right? And they don't have as many components, assuming that you're doing it brand new with APUs. If you're doing it with older hardware, then yes, it's going to involve more parts, but if you're doing it brand new with an APU, then it's not going to involve as many parts. APUs are basically CPUs or processors with a larger than normal integrated graphics. That means the APU can handle both graphics and CPU workloads. Because of that, your setup will more than likely not need a dedicated graphics card, so you don't have to install the graphics card. The only things that you would be installing, assuming you did it this way, is just the APU, the NAS drive, and assuming optional solid-state drive, the power supply unit, motherboard, and case. That's just really all you have to deal with. If you manage to bend a pin on the motherboard or something, or you damage the APU, and it's not going to cost as much to fix the problem in comparison to a gaming computer. You can find motherboards to work with these Ryzen APUs for between $60 to $85. The APUs themselves, and they come in different prices. You can see that this one is closer to $100. This one's closer, well, to $78. So, as you can see, the individual parts themselves aren't that expensive. Well, in comparison to a gaming computer. Obviously, money is tight these days, so, you know, something like this will be a cost, but it won't be as bad as a gaming computer. Because in a gaming computer, you're not going to be using an APU. You're going to be using a dedicated processor. Those will cost anywhere between $200 and $350. So you can see why I'm saying that this is something that you can afford, assuming that you can budget well, you can afford to lose it. Therefore, I think home servers are not only beneficial to you in terms of your setup, but beneficial to you in the fact that I hope it can help you break the mold of, you know, being afraid to build it or resistant towards the idea of building it. But yeah, that's really all I've got on this topic. But if you have any questions regarding these kinds of setups, feel free to ask in the comment section. I'll do my best to respond to it. Thanks for listening.